Let's face it, writing a really great novel is incredibly hard work. And the hardest part about it is figuring out how to improve your writing skills without burning out or giving up. I mean, how do you get better at writing in any sort of a meaningful time frame? Look, the key is to take the right steps at the right time. The steps that will actually move the needle on your writing skills without wasting your time. That's why on the cusp of the new year, I have decided to give you my 7 best methods for improving your writing skills in 2024 and beyond. Hello and welcome to the Many Worlds Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Heather Davis. I'm a book coach, developmental editor, and a fellow storyteller. And this is the show that's all about how to brainstorm, write, edit, publish, and sell powerful speculative fiction novels. And maybe just change the world too. Let me tell you a story. Last year, I started working with a writer who'd written the first draft of his first novel, and he was so proud of himself. It was something that he'd wanted to do his entire life. The trouble was, when he went back after taking a month away and he reread his story, he realized that it just sounded flat and dull. Don't get me wrong. It was clear that he was really passionate about his novel, and that he had an interesting premise, and that he'd done a lot of work to really flesh out his characters. There was also a lot of externally exciting stuff happening on the page. The problem was, it just didn't draw me in. It didn't make me want to turn the page. The good news is, he had a problem that was 100% solvable. Let me explain. When I went back to this writer and I asked him about what he liked to read and what he did to strengthen his writing skills, he kind of looked at me sheepishly and said, "Look, I don't really have a lot of time to read. Besides, you're either really talented at writing or you're not." Well, I knew he had some flawed thinking. So what I did was create a simple plan to help him develop the skills he needed to be able to write the novel he wanted to write. In fact, these are the very same methods I use to get better at both writing and editing. The first method to improve your writing skills is this. Understand that writing is a skill that's learned, not a talent you're born with. That's right, it's not something you're just born able to do. I mean, sure, some writers can weave beautiful sentences and it seems like it's completely effortless to them. But I promise you, they put in the work and the time to be able to do that. Let me give you an example. If you decided that you wanted to play with the London Symphony Orchestra and you went out and bought a violin, you wouldn't just practice that violin for a few months and expect to be able to go and play with the orchestra. Of course not. That's preposterous. You would know that it would take years and years of dedicated practice in order to be able to develop the skills necessary to play there. And writing is no different at all. So that means if you read your writing and then you compare it to the writing of your favorite author and you notice that there is a big difference, that's okay. Because if you learn and study and you put in the time, you also can develop the skills to reach that level. Honestly, the sky is the limit here. I promise you can develop those skills. You just need time. Basically, what you need to do is acquire the growth mindset. You need to understand that it is a skill, not a talent, even though we are told so often the opposite. So when it comes to your writing, develop a growth mindset and realize that it's a skill, not a talent. Put in the time. The second method for improving your writing is this. Read and study writing craft books. That's right, these craft books are your best friend. They represent the distilled knowledge of brilliant writers and editors who've spent many decades studying writing and the literary world. And if you're really serious about writing, you need to find the best craft books available. If you're interested in my 8 favorite, you can find them in the workbook that I've prepared for this podcast. Just go to the link manyworldswriting.com/better. I promise you they're really good, so you'll want to go to that link to get the workbook. Anyway, I digress. So when you get these great craft books, you want to actually study them. Seriously, study them like you're taking a class about writing. Get out your highlighter pen and highlight the areas that you want to remember. Take notes. Use sticky notes to flag brilliant pages. Reread the books several times until the information feels so familiar to you that you could give an impromptu lecture on it if you needed to. If you do this, if you really study these craft books and take notes and flag pages, then when you are in the flow of your own writing, you will begin to be able to apply the lessons and techniques that you learn, and you will begin to see an improvement in your writing. Method number 3 for improving your writing is this: read recent novels in your genre. If you're writing in the speculative fiction genre, try to pinpoint your subgenre and then read. Seriously, it's not enough to know and love novels that were published in the 70s, 80s, 90s, or even in the 2010s. Nope, you need to know and love books that are being published in your genre right now. Why? Well, first you need to know what's popular and what's selling, because those authors and those books are both your contemporaries and your comp titles, which are two pretty important concepts that you'll need to think about when you go to publish your novel. Second, and probably the most important reason of all, is you can't possibly write a great novel if you aren't actively reading them. In fact, I wholeheartedly agree with Stephen King when he said, "If you don't have time to read, you don't have the time or the tools to write. Simple as that." I believe that. I've seen it over and over again with the writers that I coach. Those who read a lot and who read deeply, more about that later, really do have far more skills to be able to write the novels they want to write. That doesn't, however, mean that you need to read 30 or 100 books a year. I see people brag about these types of things all the time, and it's incredible if you have the time and mental resources to be able to do that. But most of us don't have that time because, let's face it, you're busy. I get that. So try reading at least 1 or 2 novels a month. But when you read them with intention. Read them like an editor would read them. Again, more about this in a minute. So just to recap, read books in your genre. You don't have to read 100 of them a month, just maybe 1 or 2 well-chosen novels, and I promise you will begin to develop your writing skills. Method number 4 for improving your writing is this: start analyzing story like an editor. Yep. And I have a confession to make. I can't turn off my editor brain even when I'm reading strictly for pleasure, meaning I'm always analyzing story, and sometimes it drives my family nuts. Even when I'm reading a new novel in a beloved series, I'm breaking it down into parts. Why am I reading like this? Pretty simple. Because I know that these novels are powerful and popular. And that means that the authors are doing something right, something that readers are responding to, which in turn means that agents and publishers are going to be looking for something that's the same but different. Therefore, it's so important to read these novels with an editor's eye to try and figure out what that certain brand of magic that they're weaving is all about. You can learn so much by reading novels. The good news is that reading like an editor is actually pretty simple. You just ask yourself a lot of questions. Here are some questions that I constantly ask myself when I'm reading novels. How big is the scope of the story? What POV is the author using and why? What kinds of stories are popular right now? How does the writer use dialogue? How do they begin and end chapters? What did the setup of the novel look like? What was their catalyst? Are their characters' motivations clear? How does the writer weave in backstory so that it doesn't feel like an info dump? Are there any plot holes in the novel or any holes in the emotional evolution of the protagonist? By asking yourself these questions and other questions, you'll begin to see that novels are not just a whole entity, but instead they're like a puzzle that's built of discrete pieces. It'll start to feel a whole lot like pulling the curtain back and realizing that the great and terrible Oz was just an ordinary man from Omaha, Nebraska, who had been using elaborate magic tricks and props. But you know what? It's actually a fun thing to realize about a novel. It's fun to see how they work. It doesn't take the magic away. If anything, it makes the magic even more intense because it's still amazing that all of the simple parts can come together to make something so intensely beautiful and compelling. And I promise you that reading like an editor is probably the biggest thing that will make a difference in your writing. Not just reading books, but reading them with intense focus, taking them apart, figuring out how they tick, putting them back together in your mind, really turning them around and analyzing them from every direction. That is one of my biggest secrets to getting better at writing. Method number 5 for improving your writing is this: learn and implement one new technique at a time. This goes along with method number 4, which is read like an editor. Once you start reading like an editor and studying successful novels, it's important to pick just one technique at a time to really focus on and implement. For example, if I'm a writer who's trying to learn how to incorporate backstory, then I'm going to be studying the novels I'm reading for just that one thing, backstory. I'll start at page 1 and I'll take note of every single place where I see the author dropping breadcrumbs of backstory. Again, this is time to get out your highlighter pen or flag certain areas with sticky notes. And here's the thing. After you study the technique, then you have to go and try to apply it to your own scenes and chapters. See if you can work the same magic with your novel. It's only by implementing these techniques, even if it feels clunky, even if you think you're doing it wrong, that you are going to get better. I promise. Even if it feels a little awkward at first, even if you're sure you're doing it wrong, keep trying, keep studying, keep reading novels and then going back to your own and saying, I bet I can do that too. Method number 6 for improving your writing is this: get feedback on your work. That's right. Here's the hard truth. In order to get better at writing, you absolutely need quality feedback. Why? Because you are way too close to your work to ever see it clearly. Even the most experienced writers cannot see the holes in their own work. There will be plot holes and logic failures and emotional inconsistencies that you are literally incapable of seeing. Not because you're not smart, but just because you have the curse of knowledge. And no matter how long you put the work in a drawer, you will never be able to see all of the problems with it because you wrote the darn novel. And whether it's been a month or a year, you actually remember most of it. So you can't give yourself honest feedback. Okay, so now that we agree that you need feedback, how do you go about getting it? Well, the best possible way to get feedback is from a knowledgeable book coach or developmental editor. And not just any old book coach or editor will do. Nope. You need one who is deeply experienced in your genre and has been doing this job for a while. Why a book coach or developmental editor? Well, there are a few reasons. Number 1, they can see your work with fresh and unbiased eyes, which means they can see the plot holes and the logic slips that you will never be able to see. Number 2, you will never have anyone pay so much attention to your work. Seriously, a good book coach might know your novel better than you do, and that will only benefit your story. Number 3, they will push you to make your novel the very best version of itself. That's right, they don't settle for second best. They see the potential of your novel, and they help you hone it until it is perfect. The problem? Well, book coaches and developmental editors can cost several $1,000s a month. That is definitely a barrier for a lot of people getting this kind of support. But if you're looking for a high-touch group mentorship program for a fraction of that cost, you should check out my Powerful Writers, Powerful Novels mentorship program. This is a year-long mentorship that will step you through planning your novel, writing your novel, and building an author platform. So if you're interested, please go to manyworldswriting.com/mentorship to fill out an application and get on that wait list. However, if you're not ready for professional mentorship right now, there are still plenty of ways to get meaningful feedback on your work. If you are fairly new to writing, I would highly suggest you find a critique group to join. Many state writing associations have such groups if you do a little poking around. In fact, in the workbook I have for this episode, I've included a list of groups. Alternately, you could use social media to find or start an online critique group. If you're a more experienced writer and you want deeper feedback, I would suggest finding a critique partner. A critique partner is that special someone who's willing to go the distance with you in your novel. You and your critique partner will trade pages back and forth as you progress along your novel writing journey. You will learn together and grow together and offer helpful, growth-oriented feedback to each other. No matter which way you ultimately choose to get feedback, it is probably the most important step you can take to improve your writing. I'm serious. I know it's a little scary to show your work to someone else. I remember feeling nauseated when I first did it. But here's the thing, you will never get better at writing unless you're willing to see the areas that need improvement in your own novel. It can be scary, but just go into it knowing that there are going to be areas that you need to improve. Method number 7 for improving your writing skills. Make writer friends. So here's the thing, no one will ever understand you like your writer friends. They're the ones who also spend countless hours reading and sitting in front of a keyboard, struggling with doubt, indecision, and writer's block. They're the ones who know what getting an agent or publishing your novel would really mean to you. They're also the ones who will make writing feel like a lifestyle instead of just a transient hobby. Your writer friends will be there to talk to when things aren't going well, and there to celebrate with when things are going better than you ever thought. In short, writer friends will keep you motivated, focused, and excited to keep writing. So go out and find them. They can be in those writing critique groups, they might be online, they might be in libraries or bookstores. It doesn't matter where you find them. Just find them and do it in a hurry. Okay, writers, if you're ready to learn more about how to become a better writer, I've created a really helpful workbook that you can access at manyworldswriting.com/better, or you can find the link right in the show notes. Either way, I hope this episode was helpful. Please take a moment to follow or subscribe to this podcast and share it with a fellow writer. That's the easiest way to show your support and let me know that you're interested in hearing more. Until next week, keep writing, keep dreaming, and remember, the world needs your stories right now, so don't you dare give up on your novel or yourself. See you next time.